Hey everybody and welcome to episode number 39. Today we're going to be talking about Jamboree On The Air, which comes up next weekend. We got a whole bunch of information on it. We're going to be talking about the Red River Radio Amateurs Club, and we got some news, we got some upcoming events and hamfests, and a whole lot of other stuff. So stay tuned. Hey everybody and welcome back to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. This is episode number 39, and like I said, today we're going to be talking about Jamboree On The Air. My name is Curtis, I am the host, and my call sign is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike. You can find all the links that we're going to be talking about in this episode, as well as additional information in the show notes at everythinghamradio.com /podcast /39. That's the number 39. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com /everythinghamradio. You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com /everythinghamradio, and on Twitter at K5CLM. And like I said, today we're going to be talking about Jamboree On The Air, so let's get started with that. Alright, so Jamboree On The Air, or JOTA for short, is the largest scouting event in the world. It's held annually on the third full weekend of October, and this year it so happens to fall on the 15th and 16th of October in 2016. JOTA uses amateur radio to link scouts and hams around the world, around the nation, or even in your own community. For the scouts, Jamboree really requires no travel other than to driving to somebody's ham shack, and that is letting you use his or her equipment. But a lot of times, the JOTA station is set up at a camping event or some kind of camporee or something like that. And this typically makes for a great show up or a great turnout, I guess you could say, for that station. So scouts from any age can participate, from Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts to Venturers, which I have no idea what they are, and even the Girl Scouts. So once on a ham station, the communication typically involves talking on a microphone and listening through the station speakers. However, many forms of specialized communications may also take place, such as video communications, digital communications, communication through satellite or Earth-based relays called repeaters. The exchange includes information like your name, your location, scout rank, age, hobbies, stuff like that. Stations will be communicating with could be anywhere from across town to across the country or even around the world. The World Scout Bureau reported that nearly 1 million scouts and almost 20,000 amateur radio operators participated in JOTA last year in 2015 from more than 17,776 stations in 151 countries. That, my friends, is a lot of people. Now, this is nowhere near what it is for field day, I'm sure, but when you consider that it's going to be for a youth group or something like that, that's awesome. And I really wish I would have realized what or when this was. I did a blog post about this last year for the 2015 JOTA event, but I really wish I would have realized when it was going to be, because it just so happens that my youth group, our Pathfinder Club, which is basically my church's version of Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, has a camporee this weekend as well. And I really wish I would have realized it, because I would have, kind of maybe talked to the leadership about having some kind of ham station set up at our campground to take part in this. Because we have like 4 different badges that we can earn through amateur radio. So that might have been fun. But unfortunately, I have to work and I didn't realize it. So as far as the Jamboree On The Air, like I said, it is held on the third weekend of October. There's no really official hours like a normal CUSA party or an event or something like that. It's just over the weekend. And it officially starts on Friday evening during the JOTA start run and runs through Sunday evening. So that entire what 48-hour period or so is basically when it runs for, and it is available to use any amateur radio frequency that that operator has license ability to use. So if you're using an extra class, you're going to have the entire spectrum. If you're going to be a general class, then you're going to have a little bit less. But nonetheless, any licensed available frequency that the ham radio operator has, you can use. You can do it on voice, you can do it on CW, PSK31, you can do it on 2-meter simplex, 70-meter simplex, you can do it on D-Star. They actually have a reflector. REF033A has been allocated for the full-time JOTA radio scouting D-Star reflector. But however, after contact is established, stations should disconnect from the reflector and choose another reflector or an unused repeater. So make sure, just like in anything else with ham radio, establish your communications on a repeater or something like that. And if you're close enough, go to a simplex channel. Now, this is something that the operator on scene will really need to figure out what they're going to do. But it's just like anything else they're going to do. So that's D-Star. They also have a wide area talk group for DMR, which you can find information on that at www.dmr-marc.net. And it's basically the same thing. You have this group that you're using, and it is the DCI TAC-310 talk group for DMR. Now, of course, you can use simplex if you have stations that are close enough to you. You can use like the national calling frequency or something like that, and then move off to the side to a different frequency if you can hear it. There is some nodes set up on IRLP. You can use the node 9091 as a common meeting place or a calling channel, and after that, disconnect from 9091 and go one station. Should connect to another local node. You can also use Echolink. You can do this on Windows, Mac, iPhone, Android, whatever. There is a dedicated conference node of JOTA. It's star JOTA, JOTA -365 star. And it's node number 480809. So you can connect with Echolink if you want to. And again, once you get established, disconnect from the conference and go direct if you can. There is also APRS that's going to be up and running that you can find information on. I'm not going to really go into a whole lot on that. There is a couple links that are included in the show notes, so head on over there and check those out. So what exactly what should you do, or some general guidelines, so to speak, of what JOTA is. A lot of this is taken directly from the Scout America website. So JOTA on the Air is about getting young people to talk to each other using amateur radio to get their license, to get the ham radio bug, as I always say. So we've always talked about, or one of the things that we've talked about several times on this podcast, is how to get the youth involved in amateur radio, and this is really one of the good ways of doing it. You get something like a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout or something like that, introduce them into amateur radio, and they can kind of run with it, right? I know that my youth group has several owners. Like I said, we have like 4 of them. We have radio and radio advanced, which basically is your technician and your general class license, and then we also have Morse code, which you have to learn 5 word a minute for the basic code honor, and then I believe it's 10 word a minute for your advanced honor. And then there's other things, electronics you can get with your amateur radio license. You have to do a little bit more, but it's a good foundation for it. So there is a lot of things, and I'm pretty sure that actually I know for a fact that Boy Scouts have stuff like this as well, because one of the requirements for getting your radio badge in Boy Scouts is to hold a 10-minute QSO with somebody on the air. So I don't know exactly what the requirements is for it, but anyways, back to what I was saying, this is a really good way of getting people involved, getting the youth involved. Whether or not they stay involved, that might be a different story. Um, how you do it is really up to you, and how you keep them involved is really up to you and your club. So, basically, show them what it's like. They're going to be saying, okay, well, I can do this on my phone, or I can do this on Skype, or I can do this on TeamSpeak, or whatever, using the internet. Um, but show them what it's like to use it on amateur radio. Show them what it's like to make that contact around the world with nothing but air in between you, right? I mean, that I remember when I was a young kid, and I think I mentioned this before on another episode. My club set up a station during one of our club camping trips, and that weekend was one of the weekends of the Olympics that when they were held in Australia. So that's been, it's been like 16, 18 years, 20 years ago or something like that. But anyways, um, we had our station set up and we were running 10 meters, and we just so happened to hear a station that was calling CQ, right? It was on 10 meters. I wasn't really expecting it to be big, but the more I listened to it, the more I was, trying to get a hold of this person, and then all of a sudden I heard special event station for the Olympics. And so I'm talking, literally around the world on 10 meters. Granted, the signal was like the RST report for them was like a 1-1 or something like that, but it was enough where I could hear their call sign and they could hear me, and we can make that contact. So that was awesome. It's those types of situations that a young person is going to remember for a long time. Their very first contact of any distance. The first time we talk to somebody in Europe or South America or wherever. Those types of things are going to live with them, and they're going to remember it for the rest of their lives. Now, there might be some instances where people are going to say, well, I do that all the time. For example, one of the games that I used to play, I had several friends that, I had one that lived in Australia. I had one that lived in Europe, I think, somewhere. And, that might not be a big deal. But there's those that it will be a big deal. And those are the type of instances where it's going to give them the ham radio bug, and they're going to become ham radio operators. So if you are on the air this weekend, make sure you listen for any kind of JOTA information. Now, there's several uh, suggested frequencies that you can find on the show notes of today that are suggested calling frequencies, so to speak, of different, of all the JOTA stations. So check them out on there. And if you hear somebody calling CQ JOTA, make sure you get back with them and talk with them. I mean, it's not just here's my call sign, this is where I'm at, and here's your signal report. It's not like that. It's not like field day. It's going to be something where you're actually going to sit down and you're going to talk with them for a little bit. You're going to tell them how long you've been in a ham radio operator and where you're from and stuff like that, and listen to what they have to say. So make sure that you do that if you're going to be on the air this weekend. Check them out and learn from them, so to speak. Um, so I guess that pretty much wraps up JOTA. Like I said, check out the show notes. There's a whole bunch of other information that is in the show notes that I'm not going to talk about during the episode itself. So make sure you do that. Again, you can find those at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/39. So let's go ahead and move on to the next segment right after this short break. Are you looking for some new radio equipment? Maybe a computer for your ham shack? Or maybe you just need to find that piece from your tower that fell and you need a metal detector. All this and so much more can be found at Giga Parts. So head on over to gigaparts.com and check them out. While you're there, check out the Nana cases. These things are great cases, waterproof and hard plastic cases with soft foam insides that are totally customizable. Check them out. Find one that you like and buy it. At checkout, enter the coupon code of ETH039 for 10% off of your purchase of your Nanite case. So head on over to gigaparts.com right now and check them out. Hey everybody, for today we are going to be talking about the Red River Radio Amateurs Club. You can find them at rrra.org. You can also find them on Facebook at facebook.com/W0ILO. You can find the links, both that I just said, in the show notes of today's episode. They have their meetings on the third Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. in the basement of the Cost County Annex at 1010 2nd Avenue South in Fargo, North Dakota. They have 4 repeaters. They have a 145.350 repeater with a 123 tone that's located in Moorhead, Minnesota. They have a 14676 repeater with a 123 tone in Grandin, North Dakota. They have a 147.255 repeater with a positive offset and a PL of 123 in Wheatland, North Dakota. They also have a 444.875 repeater with a 123 tone in Moorhead, Minnesota. They have 2 nets. Both of them are on Sundays. One of them is at 8 p.m. It is on 146.52 simplex. And they have a net following that one at 9 p.m. on the Red River Radio Amateurs repeater system. This club does a lot of activities. I guess it really, maybe to keep the club going or so, it's really neat to see. They have Skywing classes, they have a Hamfest, hospital exercises, marathons, rallies. It looks like maybe a bike tour, ADA Tour de Cure. They do a field day, MS Tran ride. They have simulated emergency tests. They have licensing testing, so a whole bunch of stuff that they really do. So check out their club on Facebook or on their website. And if you happen to be in Fargo, North Dakota sometime around the third Thursday of the month, make sure you check out their meeting. Also, if you're going to be in the area on Sunday nights, make sure you check in on their nets. So I guess that about wraps up the Amateur Radio Club Spotlight for this episode. If you would like to have your club spotlighted on my podcast, please send me an email to k5clm@everythinghamradio.com. Include your name of your club, the website address, and anything in particular that you would like me to talk about. So I guess that about wraps up this segment. Let's head on to the upcoming events. Alrighty, so let's talk about some upcoming events, shall we? We have several on the list, and like I do normally, I'm going to go through it pretty fast. So if you miss something, you can either back it up and try to catch it again, or you can head over to the show notes at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/39 for all this information and so much more. So make sure you check that out as well. Okay, so on to the upcoming events. We have the Classic Exchange CW on September the 11th, starting at 1300 hours, until 800 hours on the 12th, and on the 13th from 1300 hours to 800 hours on the 14th. All these are Zulu times unless otherwise specified. The phone fray will be September the 14th from 2:30 to 300 hours. We have CW Ops Mini CWT test on September the 14th from 1300 to 1400, from 1900 to 2000, and on the 15th from 300 to 400. The RSGB 80 meter club sprint single sideband will be September the 14th from 1900 to 2000 hours. The NCCC RTTY sprint will be September the 16th from 145 to 215. The NCCC sprint will be September the 16th from 230 to 300 hours. The AGB NEMIGA contest will be the 16th from 2100 to 2400 hours. The ARRL 10 gigahertz and up contest will be starting on the 17th from 6 a.m. local time to the 17th at 2400 hours local time. The SARL VHF UHF Analog Digital Contest will be September the 17th from 1000 hours to the 18th at 1000 hours. The Scandinavian Activity Contest on CW will be say at 1200 hours on the 17th to 1200 on the 18th. The All African International DX Contest will be from 1200 hours on the 17th to 1200 on the 18th. The SRT HF Contest single sideband will be from 1300 hours on the 17th to 1300 hours on the 18th. QRP A field will be from 1600 to 2200 on the 17th. The New Jersey QSO party will be from 1600 hours on the 17th to 359 on the 18th, and then on the 18th from 1400 to 2000 hours. The New Hampshire QSO party will be from the 1600 hours on the 17th to 400 hours on the 18th, and also from 1600 to 2200 hours on the 18th as well. Washington State Salmon Run will be on the 17th, starting at 1600 hours, going to 700 hours on the 18th, followed up by the 1600 hours to 2400 hours on the 18th as well. Filled Hell Sprint will be on the 17th from 1800 to 1959. North American Sprint on RTTY will be on the 18th from 000 hours to 0400 hours. The BARTG Sprint 75 will be September the 18th from 1700 to 2100 hours. Run for the Bacon QRP contest will be on the 19th from 100 hours to 300 hours. The 144 megahertz fall sprint will be on the 19th from 1900 to 2300 local time. On the 21st, we have the phone fray from 230 to 300 hours. Again, we have the CW Ops Mini CWT test on the 21st from 1300 to 1400 and from 1900 to 2000, and on the 22nd from 300 to 400. The NAQCC CW Sprint will be on the 22nd from 030 to 230. The NCCC RTTY Sprint will be on the 23rd from 145 to 215, followed by the NCCC Sprint from 230 to 300 hours on the 23rd. The ARRL EME contest will be on the 24th from 000 hours to 2359 hours on the 25th. The CQ Worldwide DX Contest, RTTY, will be September 24th at 000 hours to 2400 hours on the 25th. The main QSO party will be on September 24th, starting at 1200 hours, ending at 1200 hours on the 25th. And the Texas QSO party will be starting on the 24th at 1400 Zulu to 200 on the 25th, and then from 1400 to 2000 hours on the 25th. The AGCW VHF UHF contest will be on the 24th on 144 megahertz band from 1400 to 1700, and on the 440 band from 1700 to 1800. The RSGB International Sprint Contest for CW will be on the 24th from 1700 to 2100 hours. On the 25th, we have the UBAON contest on 6 meters, going from 700 hours to 1000 hours. And we have the Classic Exchange on phone from 1300 hours on the 25th to 800 hours on the 26th. And then from 1300 hours on the 27th to 800 hours on the 28th. And last but not least, we have the Peanut Power QRP Sprint on the 25th from 2000 hours to 2200 hours. Again, all the times mentioned, unless otherwise specified, were in Zulu time. All this information was taken from the WA7BNM contest calendar. So head on over there to check that out for additional contests and upcoming events, as well as check out the show notes for this episode for links for all that and more. Okay, so now on to Hamfest, shall we? Alrighty, so Hamfest for the next 2 weekends, starting on the 13th in St. Louis, Missouri, we have the Microwave Update 2016 conference. On the 14th, we have the San Ramon, California Pacific Division Convention, Pacificon. On the 15th, we have the Albrook Memorial Hamfest slash Tailgate in Rome, Georgia. Anderson RC's 38th Annual Hamfest in Anderson, South Carolina. The ARRL Day in the Park in Columbia, Minnesota. MS, whichever one that one is. I always have problems with the M's. Anyways, Coastal ARS Savannah Swap Meet in Savannah, Georgia. The Greenville Hamfest in Greenville, Tennessee. Kingman Hamfest in Kingman, Arizona. The Muskogee Color Tour Hamfest in Muskogee, Michigan. The Sirocco Hamfest in Sirocco, New Mexico. The Southside ARC Hamfest in Belton, Missouri. And Swaptober, I cannot say that, Swaptoberfest in Rickrell, Oregon. On the 16th, we have the 2016 Kalamazoo Hamfest and Amateur Radio Swap and Shop in Kalamazoo, Michigan. We have the Knauts ARC Hamfest in Knauts, Ohio. I'm probably butchering that name of that city. The Connecticut State Convention Nutmeg Hamfest in Meridian, Connecticut. Flea at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and RF Hill ARC Hamfest in Sellersville, Pennsylvania. Again, those were on the 16th. The following weekend, starting on the 21st, we have the Arizona State Convention Copa Fest 2016 in Maricopa, Arizona. We had the Florida State Convention Melbourne Hamfest, which was postponed because of the Hurricane Matthew that came in. It's going to be in Melbourne, Florida. And we have the Texoma Hammerama in Ardmore, Oklahoma. On the 22nd, we have the 4th Annual Tailgate Fest in Hollywood, Maryland. We have the Hamfest Chattanooga 2016 in East Ridge, Tennessee. We have the Shelbyville Tailgate 2016 in Shelbyville, Indiana. The Wiregrass ARC Fall Tailgate in Headland, Alabama, and the Wisconsin Aries Races Conference in Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin. And last, on the 23rd, we have the Mason-Dixon Hamfest in Upperco, Maryland, and the Massillon ARC Hamfest in Massillon, Ohio. And that brings me to the end of this 2-week period. All this information was taken from the ARRL Hamfest calendar. You can find links to it as well as to all of these Hamfests in the show notes of today's episode. Alrighty, so that brings us to the news. Alright, so for the news for this episode, we have quite a bit to talk about, I think. First off, we're going to talk about the overview of Army and Air Force Mars webinar that's coming up on October the 25th. If you have any inkling of interest of communicating during major disasters, this is probably a fairly decent webinar that you probably should attend if at all possible. I'm going to try to. Hopefully I can. But anyways, registration is open for the webinar, overview on Army and Air Force Mars. And it's going to be on October the 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 0000 hours UTC on the 26th. The U.S. Air Force Mars Chief Dave Chapchuk, no, that's not right, Stapchuk, KD-9DXM, will discuss the history of the Military Auxiliary Radio System, or MARS for short, program, and membership requirements for amateur radio operators. He will also highlight the joint Mars Phone Patch Network, which provides daily support for U.S. Armed Forces. The Phone Patch Network facilitates not only the morale and welfare phone patches, but routinely handles mission-related radio calls and occasionally assists U.S. air crews with in-flight emergency phone patches when air traffic control cannot be reached. U.S. Army Mars Program Director Paul English WD8DBY will discuss the quarterly U.S. Department of Defense (DoD) contingency communications exercise, which promotes interoperability between amateur radio community and the DoD. English will also discuss initiatives for promoting the use of 60 meters between amateur radio and the federal government, as well as the types of information Mars operators will request from the amateur radio community during the upcoming quarterly DoD communications exercise COMEX on October the 30th and to November the 1st. Webinar registrants will receive a confirming email that contains information about joining the webinar. You can find links to get registered in the show notes towards the bottom in the news section. You know, Mars, if you don't know really what Mars is, and I might do an upcoming episode on what Mars actually is. Mars is basically it's kind of like a Races, Aries type group or something like that, but it's basically dealing with the governments like the Army and Air Force and stuff like that. So this is really a neat little webinar to join to listen to if at all possible. And like I said, I think I will do a upcoming episode on Mars, so stay tuned for that in a later episode. Okay, so the major news topic of this week has definitely been Hurricane Matthew. Now, if you live anywhere along the eastern seaboard, Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina, I'm sure this is like all over the news, so you know all about this, and maybe even participated in the Hurricane Watch Net. But for those of us that are not on the eastern seaboard, yes, it's made the news mainly, or at least here in the DFW area. It's it's made the weather segment of the news. You know, they talk about it during the weather. Okay, well, this hurricane is going this way, and this is the way it's going to go, and you know they might show an instance, a little story or something like that about it. But those of y'all on the East Coast, y'all I'm sure have been inundated with stories and with damage reports and stuff like that. I know that there have been massive flooding, massive damage from this, and if memory serves me correctly, one of the articles that I read stated that there was something like I want to say like 12 inches or 17 inches um, in Savannah, Georgia, at Hunter U.S. Army Airfield. There has been 17.49 inches as of the time that this article went out on October the 9th. So there's been a lot of water dropped in all different areas. There's been some major damages done to some piers. One of the pictures that I saw is of the Spring Made Pier in Myrtle Beach. It was heavily damaged, like the whole end section of the thing just broke off and ended up along the beach. There have been some really nice wind gusts. In Cape Canaveral, Florida, there was a wind gust of 107 miles an hour on a elevated tower at 54 feet above the ground. Uh, Timby Tybee Island in Georgia recorded 96 miles an hour. Daytona Beach got 91 miles an hour. So I mean, there's some massive winds that came along, and some massive rainfall. Like I said, Savannah, Georgia got almost 17 and a half inches. Um, the Hilton Head Islands in South Carolina got 11 inches. Charleston, South Carolina got 10 and a half inches. Orlando got just shy of 9 inches. And the lowest is Daytona Beach, Florida at 5.29 inches in this article. So I mean there was some massive flooding, massive winds, and I read in one of the articles that um, Walt Disney World actually closed for the fourth time in its history, and of those four times, I think three of which were because of hurricanes. And this was the first hurricane to hit Florida in the past like 10 years. So I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of people that were looking for gas. I know I saw several news stories on television where people were interviewed saying, they were looking all over for gas. So I'm sure that there was, gas shortage, food storage shortages, construction material shortages and stuff like that, and the rebuilding of the damages and stuff like that that this hurricane has caused is probably going to be a long time coming. So yeah, that's a major thing. As far as the weather net, it started um, back on no, not October 9th. It officially closed on October 9th at 0400 hours UTC time, and it was the longest activation in history of the Hurricane Watch Net. It went continuously for 6 days and 7 hours, gathering real time ground truth weather data and passed it along to the National Hurricane Center via the center's WX4NHC. Um, According to the story in the ARRL, it says the Hurricane Watch net stands down following a record activation for Hurricane Matthew. The various amateur radio emergency services net also activated along the eastern seaboard over the past week, the first major hurricane of 2016's Atlantic hurricane season, and at one point a Category 5 storm. Matthew has been downgraded to a post-tropical cyclone and is poised to head out into the Atlantic. As of 0900 UTC, Matthew is still generating strong winds over eastern or North Carolina as it moves to the east northeast just off the Outer Banks. The NHC reported that record breaking flooding continues over portions of eastern North Carolina. The storm was some 30 miles southeast of Cape uh, Hatteras with a maximum sustained wind of 75 miles an hour, moving east at 14 miles per hour. The hurricane warning for Little River Inlet to south of Cape Fear has been discontinued, and the hurricane warning for Cape Fear to Surf City has been replaced with a tropical storm warning. Many have perished in Haiti and Cuba as a result of Matthew, and the death toll rises still. Many residents in the Bahamas and the East U.S. coast, states of Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina have felt the impact of Matthew as well, said Graves, which I'm not sure exactly who Graves is, but that's what the story says. Graves was appreciative of amateur radio volunteers who took part in the Hurricane WatchNet activation as well as those who accommodated the net's lengthy operation on 20 and 40 meters. As always, having a clear frequency benefits our net control stations and those in the affected areas, he says. It is unfortunate we had to occupy these frequencies for an extended period of time, but no two emergencies are alike, and Matthew was certainly unlike any storm anyone has ever seen before. As Hurricane Matthew pulls away from the U.S. East Coast, the Voice over Internet Protocol Skywarn Hurricane Net attracted a number of visitors, according to net managers. On board Saturday afternoon, in addition to the WX4NHC at the National Hurricane Center, stations representing a number of Federal Emergency Management Agency regional offices and National Response Coordination Center monitored the net for actionable intelligence to be used in planned recovery operations, said Net Public Affairs Officer Lloyd Colston, KC5FM. The net also activated on October 3rd for Hurricane Matthew. The net said its Georgia reflector was linked to the WX Talk conference, so net managers could help to relay reports to the local National Weather Service offices on NWS Chat and the NHC, the National Hurricane Center. According to Chief of Operations Dennis Dura, K2DCD, the net established a link up with the East Coast into North Carolina and continues to monitor for damage assessments in the areas the hurricane has already passed. The net supported the NHC on WX Talk Conference Node 7203 on Echolink IRLP Reflector 9219 and used the IRLP Reflector 9553 as a backup. The Salvation Army Team Emergency Network, or Saturn, on 14.265 MHz was also activated for Matthew, handling outbound emergency priority and health and welfare traffic from the hurricane-affected areas. Matthew was the first Category 5 hurricane to form in the Atlantic Basin since Hurricane Felix in 2007. So as you can tell, there was a lot of hams that helped out during this disaster, and my heart goes out to all those that live on the eastern seaboard that got the damages. Um, and I'm hoping I haven't talked to Kel K4CDN with the Ham Radio 360 podcast lately, but I hope he didn't get a whole lot of damage. If you have any stories, if you live in that area, and you have stories of damage or experiences that you had during this net, please shoot me an email, or you can go to my website at everythinghamradio.com, and on the right hand side there's a little box that says send voicemail. Send me a short audio message telling me about your experiences. I believe it's limited to like 2 minutes, or maybe it's 30 seconds, I'm not sure which, but send me a short email and let me know what your experience was with Hurricane Matthew. Alright, so that pretty much wraps it up for this episode. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this episode of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. Again, you can find all the links that we talked about in today's episode, as well as some additional information in the show notes at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/39. If you'd like to receive emails on when I publish a new podcast episode or a new blog post, you can subscribe to my email list at everythinghamradio.com/subscribe. If you would like to assist financially in making sure that this podcast stays alive for a long time to come, there are several ways you can do it. You can either make a one-time donation through PayPal, which you can find a link to it at the bottom of the show notes. You can also become a per-episode subscriber or a contributor through Patreon, or you can simply shop on Amazon.com like you normally would using my affiliate code. You can follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/everythinghamradio, on YouTube at youtube.com/everythinghamradio, and on Twitter at K5CLM. If you like what you heard here, please give me an honest review and a star rating on iTunes or Stitcher Radio or iHeartRadio or wherever you are listening to. Also, please share with your friends and let them know what you thought about my podcast. So, until next time, this is K5CLM signing out. 73, y'all.